Things are getting bad to worse for Sir Keir Starmer and his Labour Party. According to this, that he's unable to stop shadow ministers' revolt over the Israeli-Gaza policy following resignation threats. We're going to read into this from iNews, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an article from the iNews with the headline that Sir Keir Starmer is unable to stop shadow ministers' revolt over the Israeli-Gaza policy following resignation threats. 11 Labour shadow ministers have so far called for a ceasefire in defiance of the Labour leader's messaging. So this is obviously, we've touched on this already, but it feels like the situation is getting more and more exacerbated over the weekend. And something's going to have to give. Now, I've seen a couple of people making certain points about why Sir Keir Starmer shouldn't call for a ceasefire and how it may potentially, for some reason, benefit having not upsetting Israel. I would just like to point out something very obvious here. I think it's absolutely inhumane to not call for a ceasefire from the humane side of things, because my position is that I just want the bloodshed to stop. That's my general position. I'm not pro-Palestine, I'm not pro-Israeli, but I know that if I talk too much about this policy, I'm just going to be branded as I'm against Israel, because that's what they will do. I'm pro-life. I want the bloodshed to stop. I want the loss of life to stop. And the argument that I've heard is that if Labour call for a ceasefire, if, say, for instance, our government called for a ceasefire, it means that we won't have any influence whatsoever with the Israeli government, and they will ignore us. Well, they wouldn't listen to us anyway, because they don't listen. They wouldn't listen to us even if we did. My argument to that is that they wouldn't even listen to us either way, and at least we'd be standing on the moral high ground, and it wouldn't. And at the end of the day, the nation that we need to pressure most is not actually Israel. It's actually the USA. It's actually America. We need to influence more, because they are the ones. They're the big bosses when it comes to the Western nations. And if you can influence America in any way, which we can't, that'd be your best chance of potentially getting a ceasefire. And you're ignoring the will of the people here. These protests that are happening, not just here, but across the world in other Western nations, they're not going away. And you can't shove it under a carpet, and you can't accuse all these people of supporting Hamas, because that's just not the way. They're not supporting Hamas. But whatever I say about this, someone's going to get upset. But my point is that a ceasefire is, in my opinion, the best option. But I know some people will disagree. But let's dive into this. So Sir Keir Starmer is facing a growing revolt over his Israel policy from shadow ministers after accepting he is unable to fire rebel frontbenchers. At least 11 members of Sir Keir's team, dozen of other Labour MPs have called for a ceasefire in Gaza as Israel seeks to destroy Hamas. The leader of the opposition has backed a time limit pause to the fighting, but refuses to endorse a full ceasefire, arguing that it would benefit the terror group by allowing it to regroup. Now, if they get a time limit pause that allows aid and it gets innocents out, I will take that, just if it means saving lives. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still be stopping for a ceasefire in order to protect lives on both sides. Saying it would benefit Hamas, I don't know what to say on that, really, because it's bombarding hospitals and certain buildings and certain journalists being killed in the process out there. Is that really dealing with Hamas? I'll let you guys decide on that one. Sir Keir has faced a growing rebellion with even unusually loyal shadow ministers breaking ranks to demand a change of policy. Members of his inner circle have been lobbying the rebels to persuade them not to criticise the leader directly, and have succeeded in limiting the scale of the backlash, according to party sources. But he has been forced to conclude that it's not possible to stop his team from speaking out entirely, given the importance that many in Labour attach to their support for the Palestinian cause. They have strong ties to it. He can't ignore it. And the senior party official said, "We understand where people are and why they have position given their constituencies they represent, but the party line is clear and won't move." I think he'll bend rather than move. But some of the frontbenchers have made it clear to Sir Keir that they would quit if they were banned from calling for a ceasefire, the eye understands. A source close to the rebels said he was either going to have his shift position or he was going to have to show flexibility. It's not like we were going to be able to sack 15 people. Party whips did not openly threaten to discipline those who defied the leader's lines, in a reversal of unusual practice. One MP who has backed a ceasefire said, We've had loads of conversations but no heavy-handedness." However, the party has considered taking action against a former Shadow Minister, Andy MacDonald, who used the controversial slogan "From the rivers to the sea" to express backing for Palestine. And Peter Kyle, the Shadow Science Secretary, defended the decision to allow open dissent on the issue, telling Sky News, It is a strength of the Labour Party that within our party we have people who have a lived connection to both sides of this conflict and express their views and absolutely forthrightly as they should. Keir has listened to those, looked at the situation on the ground in Israel and Gaza, and has come up with a way forward that meets the challenges being faced by people in Gaza today. And that's the thing. They've been a bit open about it as well. So in turn, when I started this video, I said it could be really bad for him, but in turn it could also be a good thing, because it could also really once again test the strength of his leadership here. Can he walk that line between Israel and Palestine? Is the question we need to ask ourselves. He said that the leadership would continue engaging with those who oppose the official position, adding, "People are calling for a ceasefire. We are calling for a pause. We can dance on the head of a pin about what the nature of a ceasefire is." Ceasefire, what's my position on what a ceasefire is, in case somebody asks? It's basically Israel stops bombing Gaza, Hamas stops attacking Israel, Hamas releases the hostages, Israel releases their hostages as well. That's what I call a full ceasefire. Both sides basically lay down their arms and get round a negotiating table. That's my position on what my definition of the ceasefire is, in case anybody is curious, because I do think that while there has been a lot of condemnation in Israel, of course this all started by Hamas's actions and absolute atrocities, and they need to pay for their crimes too. It's a lose-lose situation, I know, but the ceasefire has to be on both sides of this conflict. Calls for Labour to confront Israel's government about the ongoing assault on Gaza began on the party's left, but a growing number of previous loyal MPs, including several who are Muslim or represent large Muslim populations in their constituency, have demanded a ceasefire. Sabina Mahmood, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who's closest to Keir, admitted in a letter to residents in her Birmingham Ladywood seat that an interview where the leader appeared to say Israel has the right to shut off all power in Gaza has sparked immense distress, adding, "I have represented your views with the strongest possible terms at every level of the Labour Party. None of the frontbenchers supporting a ceasefire has openly criticised the leader of the opposition or explicitly demanded a change of the party's policy." Mr MacDonald, who was previously a shadow cabinet under Jeremy Corbyn and Sir Keir, was criticised over his speech at a pro-Palestine rally at London on Saturday. A shadow minister suggesting his language would heighten the fear that people have about their own personal safety. Calls for the Palestinian state from the river to the sea, the river Jordan to the Mediterranean, is sometimes interpreted as implying that Israel should no longer exist. But an ally of Mr MacDonald said it was a complete misinterpretation and insisted that the MP was supporting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. I don't know the true interpretation of it, so I'm not going to comment on that. because unless I have a better understanding of it, it's better that I don't comment on something that specific as that, in terms of on that quotation. Mr MacDonald, the MP from Middlesbrough, who quit Sir Keir's team in 2021 after a row over domestic policy, said at the rally that we won't rest until we have justice, until all people, Israeli and Palestinians, between the rivers and the seas, can live in a peaceful liberty. Free Palestine. The Labour leader is considering taking disciplinary action against him in response, the Eye understands. Mr Carl told the Times Radio, I don't think that people should use that phrase because of the impact that it has. John MacDonald, the former Shadow Chancellor under Jerry Corbyn's leadership, has said, I think that it is a complete misinterpretation when the phrase was generalised. It was actually a phrase about how people can live together, but there has to be justice for the Palestinians in that settlement. I'm a bit curious, actually, in this article here. So they have the headline that he's unable to stop Shadow Minister's revolt, but he hasn't compromised. It hasn't said here that he has given a compromise here in this article. So perhaps maybe he will offer something in the next day or two, perhaps. But there does appear to be an understanding of sorts between Sir Keir and these so-called rebels, shall we say. He's not stupid. He understands. He understands the position. But is this the right position for him to not call for a full ceasefire? And again, it's so someone said it's the interpretation of what a ceasefire would be. And my interpretation of what a ceasefire would be Israel stopping the bombings in Gaza, would also stop any kinds of ground assaults or whatsoever setting foot in Gaza. But that would also require Hamas to stop any attacks or atrocities that they occur as well. It would also require them to release any hostages that they will have on Israelis as well. But if any hostages are to be released from Hamas's side, that would also have to come from Israeli side too, because Israel do have some Hamas and Palestinians, I believe, allegedly. They would need to be released too. It needs to be a fair thing. It can't just be a case of the full. My vision of a full ceasefire is not just a case of Israel stopping the bombing. Hamas needs to account for its actions too. So there needs to be that side of it. But more in the terms of Labour's position, really, I mean, it's a tightrope for him, and it's easy for us to say that he should call for a ceasefire when we see the atrocities taking place. And I want a full ceasefire just as much as anybody else here, and I want the bloodshed to stop. But we honestly don't know what the politics are. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We can only speculate and only allege and assume. And I just hope that he is paying attention and he is listening to those close to him. And I hope that I hope that this doesn't drag on as long. I know a lot of people are saying this is going to drag on for a very long time, which is not good. But let's hope that some kind of resolve can be made sooner rather than later with regards to that. But in terms of Labour's position, he's walking a tightrope, Sir Keir, and it is going to affect voters. It will affect voters. Will it have a massive impact on the general election? I don't think so. No, not in terms of what the issues that are taking place in the country, but it will have a effect on voters. That is for sure. But what do you guys think? What do you think about these potential frontbenchers, backbenchers potentially turning on Keir and kind of trying to push their emphasis on calling for a full ceasefire? What do you guys actually make of this? Do you think it will actually affect the Labour Party, or is it actually, as someone put, a good thing that they're having these frank discussions, these serious discussions, as opposed to just taking the fine line of ignoring the will of some people who want peace to occur? So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Like, share and subscribe as always. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.